The Supreme Court had the oral arguments for a case about transgenderism. So case 24-38, Little versus Hecox, consolidated for oral argument with West Virginia versus BPJ, is a major Supreme Court case addressing whether state laws prohibiting transgender girls/women, biological males, from competing on female-designated scholastic sports teams violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and or Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. So, this is what's going on. There's a case right now happening about transgender individuals, right? Men, essentially, competing in women's sports in schools. So the Supreme Court is taking up this case, and they are seeing whether or not it is quote-unquote constitutional. And so a total session of 3 hours was made for oral arguments yesterday. And there's a lot of things that happened, but let's go through it, because if anything that we learn is that women should not be on the Supreme Court. So let's watch this clip. Look how ridiculous Ketanji Brown Jackson sounds when she tries to discuss what a woman is. She embarrasses herself in every oral argument.
You have the overarching classification, you know, everybody has to be, play on the team that...
This is our esteemed Supreme Court justice that all liberals convinced us were so qualified.
...is the same as their sex at birth. But then you have a gender identity definition that is operating within that, meaning a distinction, meaning that for cisgender girls, they...
Did she say cisgender? I'm going to slow it down. Cisgender?
Meaning a distinction, meaning that for cisgender girls...
She says cisgender! Yo, she says cisgender! What the heck? This is supposed to be the darling jewel of the left, who is this incredible Supreme Court justice who stutters and says, she can't even have coherent sentences. She doesn't even know how to say cisgender. She says cisginger. That's worse than me. And I wasn't even born here. English wasn't even my first language. Unbelievable. Cisginger, natural redheads. We're talking about natural redhead girls? We're finally talking about preserving the redheads? So funny. Cisginger.
They can play consistent with their gender identity. For transgender girls, they can't.
So I think that, okay, so as to the part about your ability to pass over from boy to girl,
yes,
you can go from one way but not the other. I want to be clear that BPJ is not challenging that specific classification. I think that's important to start with. But I think, if anything, that's useful evidence as to the lack of a transgender-based discrimination, because if the legislature were just sort of unsettled by the notion of transgender athletes, I think the answer would have been to then bar them from passing over anyone consistent with their gender.
I appreciate that. I guess I was getting at the what I understood the Chief Justice to be trying to discuss, which was this notion that...
Look how verbose she is. In the past, 10 seconds, she hasn't said anything. Yeah, I appreciate that. And what I'm trying to get at is that the Chief Justice is that notion that, oh my goodness, does she know how to speak?
I think the answer would have been to then...
listen to it again.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I guess I was getting at the what I understood the Chief Justice to be trying to discuss, which was this notion that this is really just about the definition of who we accept that you can separate boys and girls, and we are now looking at the definition.
Literally, she didn't say anything for the past 30 seconds. She hasn't said anything.
Of a girl, and we're saying only people who were girl assigned at birth qualify.
And I'm shocked. I mean, I shouldn't be so shocked, but I am shocked. I am continuously shocked about how this kind of bimbo, this person who is so intellectually brain rotted, bankrupt, has made it to the highest court of the land. She talks like someone who has 1,000 thoughts running in her head, which is why she can't get anything out. Absolutely. But she literally, she doesn't even know what she's talking about. In that whole 1.5 minute segment, she didn't say anything of substance. All she said is cisginger. Yeah, I think we're really talking about, what we're talking about is this notion that the Chief Justice is talking about, where it's Jordan Steele, thanks for the follow. it's like this thing where it's like, you know, we're talking about boys to women, but like, you know, talking about transgender athletes. Like, seriously? Seriously? We are ruled by idiots, chat. We are ruled by idiots. And look at this part. This part was so astounding to me. It's absolutely hilarious that Biden gifted us a woman on the Supreme Court so dumb she barely has autonomic brainstem functions. If she lost a singular IQ point, she would likely forget how to breathe and also lose all cardiovascular control. Amazing. Look, right here. Justice Jackson. I guess I'm still struggling to understand why the state would have to have perfectly tailored laws. I would think the state would just have to make exceptions where people can demonstrate that the justification that makes the state's conduct constitutional doesn't apply to them. And then Mr. Mupin, I think the solicitor, he says, so making exceptions is tailoring your law. That's literally what it means, to tailor your law. Like, how is this person on the Supreme Court? If you guys, you know, and I'm sure you guys can like tell from this specific context that tailoring laws means creating laws that speak to and make a statement, not only a moral claim, but a law statement on specific situations. And so when you tailor your law, you're talking about, hey, in specific situations, this is the penalty, this is the fine, this is what we are making criminal and outlawed, and then here are certain exceptions to that conduct. That's what tailoring laws is. So she's like, I don't understand why we need to have tailored laws. Like, why can't we just make exceptions to those laws? And that's literally what tailoring your law is. That's what it means to tailor your law. That's part of making exceptions is part of tailoring your law. Exactly. We tailor the laws so that they can be enforced properly. It is absolutely incredible. That's a great comment. You can fill a scuba tank with all the air she wasted. So true. All the oxygen that she wasted from saying absolutely nothing. But this is how retarded she is. This is the person that liberals convinced us is so qualified to sit on the highest court in the land. Nick Freitas, girl assigned. I love how they treat it like a total crapshoot, as if the doctor could have walked in and identified it as anything, and a girl just happened to be on the chart. Right here, this is what she says about girls.
This notion that this is really just about the definition of we accept that you can separate boys and girls.
She doesn't know how to speak.
And we are now looking at the definition of a girl, and we're saying only people who were girl assigned at birth qualify.
And
this notion
literally
that
like she doesn't say anything. Like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness. And here's the point, chat. You're not assigned a gender at birth, you're observed a gender, okay? Gender is not assigned, it is observed at birth. You got a PP, you're a boy. You don't got a PP, you're a girl. Oh, what about the intersex people? Humans have five fingers on each hand. They have 10 fingers in total. Oh, if someone is born with 11 fingers, are they not human anymore? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yes, exceptions exist because they're abnormalities. They are biological abnormalities. They are deformities. They're mutations. Doesn't still negate the distinctions between male and female. Gender is not assigned, it is observed at birth. This is what they do with this newspeak. They gaslight us with this new language. And this is very important, where we have to reclaim language and not allow them to gaslight us in this way. Be very firm. No, gender is not assigned, it's observed at birth. It's observed at birth. This is what she said about discrimination.
I think for cisgender women and
isn't that like so her? I think she doesn't make any definitive statement. It's like, I think, and you know, I might think like
we're indifferent to a person's gender identity and applying the law.
But the law actually operates differently, I think.
The law operates differently, I think. She doesn't know. She doesn't even know what she believes. The law operates differently, I think.
For cisgender women and transgender women. That is, with respect to their desire to play on a team that matches their gender identity. Cisgender women can do it. Transgender women cannot.
She almost says trans-German. She almost says trans-German woman. You hear that?
Can do it. Transgender women.
She's trans-German. Yo, we're all trans-German now. Yo, secret Nazi confirmed. Ketanji Brown Jackson, Nazi confirmed. She wants to be a trans-German so bad. Yeah, she first says cisginger. Now she says trans-German. She wants to be a trans-German ginger. She is a Nazi. She is a German, a trans-German ginger-loving Nazi. Nazi confirmed. This is crazy. She cannot speak. Unbelievable.
And so we do appreciate a distinction, I think.
See, I think. She said it again. I think we can create a distinction
that is being drawn on the basis of your gender status, gender identity status, trans or cis, right?
So, and I want.
So we can't have a law that operates like that. We can't have a law that caters to every single person's subjective desire. Are you retarded, Ketanji Brown Jackson? I'm thinking that you are. I think you have the IQ of a walnut. Can we have a society that literally accommodates every single person's subjective view of themselves? No. What if someone identifies as a dog? Suddenly, we're gonna apply laws that apply to dogs to that person? We can't live in a society like that. We have to have objective measures and objective definitions in order to enforce the law, even have the law. We can't operate from a place where we have to match everyone's gender identity and everyone's desire to identify however they want. No, that's retarded. We can't have order in society. What's the point of having laws in the first place then? Hassan?
I want to make sure I understand
Yes.
if we're operating in Title IX world or equal protection world, because I think it might make a difference to the answer. But
Okay. Let's start with Title IX.
so Title IX, I think the question of, I look at this statute and see a distinction between boy and girl indifferent to gender identity. And I think that...
Right, but I'm testing that proposition, right? You see that distinction, and I see it too on the separation of teams level at the beginning.
Right, and I think what I'm hearing is that that distinction arises from a difference in effect, and I don't see a disparate impact analysis that's sort of hidden away in Title IX.
But why is that a difference in effect? So it's like a second order discrimination, right? The first order is separating male from female.
Right.
That's discrimination. Separating men. It's first order discrimination. It is wrong to separate men and women. What? What?
Second order is separating transgender women from cisgender women, right?
Respectfully, I would disagree.
And a second order discrimination is separating transgender women from cis women. Unbelievable. Like what? I have nothing to say. I'm speechless how retarded she is. No, there's nothing wrong with separating men and women. There's nothing wrong with separating transgender women from cisgender women. The reason why you have to caveat transgender women from cisgender women is because they're different. Everyone knows they're different. If they are just as a woman, as a biological woman, you wouldn't need the prefix transgender woman to separate them from other women. So they're not women. That's the point. Men who think that they're women are not women. We should stop the separation of basketball from hockey. They should absolutely be unified. Yeah, it's discrimination to have the NBA and NHL play on different courts with different teams. No, actually, we should have basketball teams go against NHL teams. You know what? Actually, Ketanji Brown Jackson, I agree with you. I actually agree with you. Let's combine the NBA and the WNBA. I am for that. You know why? Because it'd be hilarious. They'll see LeBron James completely dunk on and posterize. Do a poster on Angel Reese. I want to see Kevin Durant dunk on Caitlin Clark. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. Because it's discrimination to separate male from female. It's wrong. You know what, Ketanji Brown Jackson? I agree with you. Let's combine the NBA and the WNBA. I can't wait to see what happens. Truly, we must be inclusive. We must stop discriminating based on gender. And we must combine the NBA and the WNBA. It'd be great. We love to see it. Giannis Antetokounmpo, cannot pronounce his last name for the life of me. Giannis, the Greek freak, would love to see him dunk on can you imagine Giannis dunking on Caitlin Clark? Let's do it. Let's do it. And it's funny because the result of the WNBA and the NBA combining will be, if NBA franchises, they want to win, it will be the erasure of the WNBA. And that's what's happening to women's sports. With the introduction of trans women into women's sports, these men in women's sports, it's the erasure of women's sports. It's actually hilarious. And the number one proponent of this insanity are women. So if women want their own erasure in their own sports, you know what? I respect women. I respect the choices of women. Oh my gosh. And like this is insane. This is insane. So Justice Alito had this exchange with the ACLU lawyer.
Is it not necessary for there to be, for equal protection purposes, if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, an understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition? For equal protection purposes, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was just understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court.
Oh my gosh. Why are women like this? They talk so much to make one simple point. They could have used 3 words to make the point. We don't have a definition. Well, that's 4 words, right? We don't have a definition. That's all you have to say. And that's what she said in the end, but she did this loop-de-loop, this absolute verbose mess. Loop-de-loop. Actually, you know what? We have to consider what the government did and the implications of this. All to say, we don't have a working definition. Why are women like this? Why are women like this? Women, I know this is controversial. I love women. I'm going to preface this by saying I love women. But women need to shut up. They need to talk less. I think everyone would benefit from women talking less and using less words. Jeez Louise. So he asked for a definition, a working definition for the purpose of enforcing the Equal Protection Clause. And she says, we don't have a working definition. Isn't that insane?
We do not have a definition for the court. And we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
Very simple question.
I think here we just know that we basically know that that they've identified pursuant to their own statute.
This is our lawyers. These are our judges, our lawyers. These liberal women who cannot form coherent sentences, who don't even know what they believe, and are making the case to stop the discrimination of transgenders based on sex when they don't even have a working definition of sex. How are you supposed to determine if there's discrimination based on sex if you can't even know what sex is? If you don't know what a woman is, how can you say that that person is being discriminated because they're a woman? What if they decide to be a man? What if they decide to be anything else? How are you going to prove discrimination? You can't have a law that appeals to a definition without having said definition. And this is how leftists get what they want. This is how they subvert our country, because they constantly redefine things where words don't have meanings anymore. Words don't have definitions. There is no objective meaning to words. Now it's just whatever I feel like in the moment so that I can advance my agenda to destroy this country, destroy civilization, break apart families, and to amass political power. That's all it is. That they use language, they subvert language in order to get their way. That's all it is. America First Insight. Nothing sums up Justice Jackson better than this. Look what she said. I guess I'm still struggling to understand. She's already said some variation of I don't understand more than any Supreme Court justice in American history. She is a dunce. She is an idiot. I guess I'm struggling to understand. This is literally what sums up Ketanji Brown Jackson the best. More than anything. More than all the clips. More than her botching. Do you guys remember, was it last year or 2 years ago? No, a few years ago, where she said, when she was asked during the Senate hearings of, can you define what a woman is? And she says, I'm not a biologist. I don't know. Insane. This is her legacy. I guess I'm still struggling to understand. She's just struggling to understand. That's just Ketanji Brown Jackson for y'all, folks. She doesn't understand anything, and she struggles to understand anything. And all she does is present these word salads that mean nothing, that say nothing. Oh, just so useless. And she's gonna rule against anything that's in the best interest of the American people and in alignment with biblical values. So it doesn't matter. Her oral arguments are useless. They're not even needed. We should just make her be quiet. I think that'll save a lot of people a lot of time too. So here, there's this chart, okay? There was this chart that was going around during her confirmation where liberals didn't just argue Ketanji Brown Jackson was qualified for the Supreme Court. Many claim she was the single most qualified nominee ever. Look it up. I'm not exaggerating. This chart was frequently used to prove it. 4 years later, I wonder how many still believe it. Right here. Look at this. So they're comparing all the Supreme Court justices to Jackson. Look, they include public high school as a qualification. What? Everyone went to an Ivy League law school except for Barrett, right? Supreme Court clerking, public defender, sentencing commission, district judge. Actually, maybe these things make you unqualified. Because if we've known anything about the sentencing commission that subverts our laws, the district judges and the public defenders that literally advocate for violent criminals and release violent criminals, this is actually an indictment against Jackson. That she is actually not fit to sit on the highest court in the land because she is retarded. This chart proves nothing. This is like if I said, hey, look, in order to be a justice, wow, did you go eat salad on the weekend? You eat salad on the weekends? Well, I don't. Wow, you are so much more qualified than I am. It's a useless metric. It's public high school. What does that have to do with anything? If anything, like I said, that makes her underqualified because public high school is trash. Our public schools are god-awful. Our private schools are much better, especially the Christian private schools who actually teach them something and teach them good values. But most of our public high schools suck. Actually, these things that she has that other Supreme Court justices don't have makes her underqualified. And so Cremio, great account by the way, had this. It's so funny. This is the perfect encapsulation, right? You're comparing a 1992 Toyota to a 1992 McLaren F1. Transmission, manual, check. Engine location, mid-engine, check. The Toyota is all-wheel drive, the McLaren's rear-wheel drive. Oh, the McLaren is worse. Manufacturer, Toyota. McLaren sounds like a bird. Toyota's better. Aspiration, supercharged, nationally aspirated. Passenger capacity, right? The Toyota can handle 7 to 8 passengers. The McLaren can only hold to 3. Oh yeah, the Toyota is a better car. Doors, sliding and standard, butterfly or whatever. Chairs, swivel seats, weird third-person layout. This proves that the Toyota Previa 1992 is better than a McLaren F1. And I know there's a lot of people who will take the Toyota because it's more useful for their use case, especially if you have a family and a lot of children. But objectively, we all know McLaren is a better car. But this is how liberals subvert us and gaslight us with this kind of framing. Look, Ketanji Brown Jackson was so much more qualified because she went to public high school. She was a public defender. She was a district judge. This chart was obviously stupid in how selective it is. For instance, IRC Alito is the only one on the court who has experience as a federal prosecutor. He put key NJ mob figures and terrorists behind bars. That should count for a heck of a lot. But they don't put that on the chart. Instead, they put things like, you went to a public high school? You are more qualified than other judges. It is so dumb. It's so dumb. Liberals are so disingenuous in this way. So disingenuous. They lie to your face. They deceive you. They slander. This is the kind of people we're dealing with. This is the kind of people we're dealing with. And I think this chart is so incredible. So incredible. Ketanji Brown Jackson speaks more than all of the male Supreme Court justices combined. Think about that, chat. Think about that. Not only does she speak more than all the male justices, she speaks more than all of the male justices combined. Look at this. And I said this already. Look at how much women talk. Women need to shut up. But look, female justices, look how much they talk. Ketanji Brown Jackson talks the most, then Amy Coney Barrett, then Sotomayor, then Kagan, then Roberts, and Roberts is the most liberal, and then Gorsuch, and then Kavanaugh, Alito, and then Thomas. Look at it, Clarence Thomas. What a Chad. What a freaking Chad. Only 96 words uttered for the first 8 arguments. Limby Wan Kenobi? Limby Wan Kenobi? Yo, thanks for the follow. Hey, weren't you already following me? What happened? Why did you have to refollow me? Limby Wan Kenobi, how you doing? But incredible. Incredible. Look at this. That Ketanji Brown Jackson, okay? She speaks more than all of the male justices combined. Combine all of the male justices, Ketanji Brown Jackson speaks more. And of course, you see all the female justices, when you combine them, it is more than double the amount that men talk. It is crazy. It's crazy. Stereotypes exist for a reason, chat. Here's another chart. Ketanji Brown Jackson, so many words to so little intelligence. 11,000 words for her first 8 arguments. Clarence Thomas, 96. Clarence is a stoic Chad who only needs to speak little. He has authority because he speaks little. But when he speaks with authority. Yes, it's smarter to use as little words as possible to summarize your point than to go into great detail about it. But she doesn't even go into great detail about it. Most of her words, as we saw with these oral arguments, these clips of her oral argument, it's her just saying, you know, I think that's a great point. And, you know, I would think that the Supreme Court Chief Justice needs to do this because, you know, it's really under the notion that it's my understanding that, transgender individuals, and that's how she just talks an earful. She chalks up an earful and just talks and talks and talks, saying filler words, buzzwords, unbelievable. And Amy Coney Barrett is not much better. She talks the second most. And look, during the oral argument today, Justice Amy Coney Barrett repeatedly referred to boys who identify as girls as trans girls. She also used the term cisgender, which many of us find offensive. It's concerning that she has adopted the ideology's language. Look, she says trans girls here. 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 Cisgender here. So, Amy Coney Barrett, supposed to be this Catholic trad woman. She adopts and uses the language of the left. She has always been a bad choice for Supreme Court justice. She is a subversive person who, when push comes to shove, rules against the interests of the American people. She rules against Christian rulings, with taking the side of Christians, and she will take the side of liberals and godless hedonists over the side of Christians and Americans. So you think you're smarter than a woman elected to the Supreme Court? Yeah, I'm thinking that I might be smarter than Ketanji Brown Jackson and Amy Coney Barrett. I don't care their credentials. Credentialism is gay. It means nothing in today's society. Oh, you went to this law school, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They literally have affirmative action for women and for blacks. I remember when I was applying to colleges that I saw an article about a guy, a black dude who got into all 8 Ivy League colleges. I had higher test scores than him. I had higher GPA than him. I had more extracurriculars and accomplishments than him. But he got in and I didn't. Why? Because he was black. You know how radicalizing that was? That's why I was never super libtard. I was never super libtard. Because I saw how the system is rigged against Asians and whites, and I saw how the system favors blacks and browns. In the same way with women and men, it's so much easier for a woman to get into STEM than a man is, because they give preferential treatment for women and for blacks and minorities, these black and brown minorities, than East Asian, yellow minorities, white adjacent minorities, and white people. So I'm not sorry that your credentials mean nothing to me. Oh, you went to an Ivy League law school? I don't care. You went to this college and you have this degree? I don't care. Because prove to me that you're smart. Prove to me your intelligence. Win me over by the persuasiveness and cohesiveness of your arguments and your worldview, rather than appealing to these, muck credentials. I graduated from this university. I don't care. That means nothing anymore. Why do you say Asians when you say whites, blacks, and browns? Why not say yellows, whites, blacks, and browns? Because no one says yellows. Everyone says whites. Everyone says blacks. Everyone says browns. Everyone says Asians. So coffee beans are smarter than Justice Jackson. Yep. And so this is a response for most people. Advocate 05, thanks for the follow. Justice Jackson is not a competent person. I'm sorry, this is not something I want to say, but good Lord, these lawyers are having to explain basic concepts and historic cases to her. What the heck is she doing on the Supreme Court? She is a diversity hire. She was literally a diversity hire. Do you guys remember that Biden says the next Supreme Court justice he elects will be a black lady, be a black woman? So that is by definition illegal, by the way, to say that I will explicitly prohibit people who are not black and not a woman to the Supreme Court. That's illegal, yet they get away with it. Because civil rights law, that doesn't exist to protect people on the basis of immutable characteristics. That's what they sold it as. That's not why it exists. It exists to give preferential treatment to perceived oppressed minority groups and to put down those who do well in society, like whites and Asians and men who build society. That's what civil rights legislation exists for, is to destroy society, to destroy families. That's literally why it exists. So why is she on the Supreme Court? Because she's a DEI hire elected, not because she was so accomplished and so smart. We see, even with these oral arguments, she's retarded. But she was elected because she's black and she's a woman. Which, arguably, if you look at the statistics, you look at their behavior, and if you have basic pattern recognition, if her being a black woman, okay, should warrant more skepticism and more investigation into whether or not she is qualified for the Supreme Court. And a lot of people hated Charlie Kirk for this, but he said, hey, I will have to check if my pilot is black, whether he's a DEI hire or not. Why? Because these corporations were hiring pilots solely based on their race, because they're black, not because they're qualified. So if that's going to be your argument, liberals, that you're going to hire black women only because they're black women, not because they're qualified, that warrants more scrutiny and more skepticism and more criticism to see, is this person qualified? And lo and behold, she is the most retarded person on the Supreme Court. Man, I'm using retarded a lot. I need to stop using that word. Let's use it. She is the most inept. She is the most incapable person, least qualified person to be on the Supreme Court. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She just talks in circles. She makes no arguments. And essentially, it's just this. I guess I'm struggling to understand. It's not even, I'm still struggling to understand. It's, I guess I am. I guess. She doesn't know. She just thinks. She just guesses. And that is who sits on the highest court of the land. We are ruled by morons. These are the ones that are shaping the way that everyday Americans live. Unbelievable. I don't want to live like this, chat. I don't want to live like this. I really don't want to live like this. Never stop using retard. Hey, man, I want to expand my vocabulary a little more. Like, retard is a great word. But I don't want to just... I want to expand my insults. I want to expand my pejoratives. The Bible said all this would happen. The Bible is true. The Bible predicts all things.